Hello folks, Jonathan Milam here. I think the last review I did was of this very horn. It is a Bach 190 1B. They call it the commercial. It's got a bronze bell. If you can see, and the lighting is strange here, the upper balusters are copper, the bottom are brass, largely brass horn. But you do have the bronze bell and the copper balusters, which they say gives a little more feedback, is one of the things that they said. One thing that I did omit yesterday when I was doing the vid on this, the Bach 190 comes with two tuning slides from the Bach factory. I use the D tuning slide, which is definitely going to offer more resistance, but I did want to point out the other one, if I hold it right up down, you can see is much more ovate, much more of a circular type slide. If you were wanting to do high range, that would probably give you less resistance. If you like a more open feel, I suppose to some degree it's going to do something as well as brighter and darker, you know, so on and so forth. Everything affects everything when you get into trumpet. The biggest differentiation, the easiest differentiation is, of course, the mouthpiece. I'm going to actually compare in this video the Bach Commercial Strad to an Adams A5, which is the commercial or lead horn for Adams. And as a throw-in, I've got a tremendous A6 here, which is like the old Connie, which the more I play it, the better I like it. And it fits right in. It's a worthy competitor. Really, the A6 can do anything, but it fits, I think, in with these horns as well, so we're going to try it. I'm going to use 4 mouthpieces, starting off with a Reeves C2J, very, very deep mouthpiece. And going to just play snippets from a conservative repertoire. For the first 2 mouthpieces, I'll use the equivalent of a Bach 7B, very much a legit type mouthpiece. Reeves 42B is what I'll be using. Then I'll be using the 42C, which is pretty much a standard, and also a Warburton shallow cup for the last measure. But we'll start off, I'm going to use the just the first part of the Lord's Prayer. If you needed something very dark, very majestic, you're at a wedding, small venue, but they wanted a trumpet, but they still didn't want to be blasted out. So we'll try that first of all with the Bach. Moving on to the Adams A5. And the Adams A6. Pretty sounding horns, aren't they? I was playing one of them a few minutes ago and I thought, boy, that's just almost what you'd expect out of a pretty tenor trombone in that range. Okay, now I'm going to go to a much more, this was, to my way of thinking, this is conventional. 24 drill, rather a deep cup modified C cup, probably they would call it. It's the Reeves 42B, which is his take on the Bach 7B, going to be very similar, of course, to Bach's 5B. Very much legit. We'll use the same song. Again, you're in a legit circumstance. How is this horn going to pull it off? How are the atoms going to pull it off? I'll say here, I was talking to a man earlier today, why I do these videos. Somebody's going to be looking for the horn and they're going to be saying, that is the mouthpiece that I'd use. Let me see how. So we try and give you enough diversity so that if you're looking at these horns, wondering, you can say, that is probably the mouthpiece. That's the sound I'm looking for. That might be the horn. Hopefully it'll be beneficial for you. Now we've got the Adams A5. I definitely lean towards appreciating the lighter belled horns, maybe because I'm not a power player, don't play with a tremendous amount of volume or air. But this is one that's a little different. Of course, the A6, the old Constellation lookalike, little heavier bell, but also a much smaller lead pipe. I think it's about 433, the initial bore. What an easy horn to play, but I think it ranks up with these in its potential. All right, I've had enough of that legit stuff. I told you some time back I was flying back home from a week of work and was thinking, what can I do for kind of a little peppier number? And played it, really liked it. It's a gospel one. If you've been to church in the last 50 years, at least back when we used to sing out of hymn books, I remember when my burdens rolled away. Great little chorus, a little more bounce to it. Going to do this with the Reeves 42B, then we'll go to a Warburton shallow mouthpiece. And again, this is with the Bach Strad Commercial. Nice and peppy, isn't it? Okay, we'll do the same thing with the Adams A5, their lead horn. Okay, same thing. We've got the Reeves 42C mouthpiece we're playing, and we'll use it on the Adams A6. Okay, the last mouthpiece, the three horns, now we're using a pretty shallow piece, definitely a lead commercial sounds you'll get out of this. It is the Warburton shallow. I used this yesterday and somehow I had a Warburton QM backbore in it. Really, I wondered what was happening with my lip. And then I found out later, this is with a Warburton 6L backbore. A little more standard there. And we'll try the same song. But you know what? I think I'll raise it up at least a third and give you a little more idea what we'd do in the upper register. Again, this was with the Bach Commercial with the Warburton shallow mouthpiece. Okay, we'll use that same mouthpiece, the Warburton 6 shallow, with the Adams A5. Okay, we'll take that same, we'll take the same mouthpiece, the Warburton 6 shallow, and we will use it with the Adams A6 trumpet. All right, just a fun little time here. I can't keep all of these horns. I've bought a number recently, too many, and some of them will have to hit the road. Your opinion, what you like best, what you'd like to have the most, and of course a great Bach commercial that we've got here, the B1, 1B, and the Adams A5, Adams A6, some great trumpets and close to hand for us to fiddle with today. Take care as always, take care of yourself and someone near you. We'll catch you next time.